is one we've heard a lot from our community over the areas on the Port Hills with mass movement and rockfall issues. They're really concerned that the pedestrian access is being compromised in some areas, and while we recognise that there are real safety issues over mass movement and engineering solutions that need to be made, it's a real concern when we're looking at increased pedestrian access on the hills with Redcliffe School possibly closing, and extra traffic as well that generates. And so we're very keen for pedestrian access, decent footpaths to be prioritised for pedestrians in this area. We've had some further information on both Moabone Point and Quarry Road from staff since our resolution, but there's also Shag Rock Reserve that you might have seen in the Christchurch Mail this morning. The large set of shipping containers that everyone sees photos of down by Sumner have a 2.5 metre footpath underneath them, and there's a temporary one on the other side of the road at the moment, but it's not particularly good, and so there's currently no funding in that transport project to reinstate the footpath for pedestrian access, and I think that David Edmondson has some further information on that one.
I think there was an issue around including the specific Moabone Point and Quarry Road and other areas, certainly accepting, because our staff have got to do a lot of work on, the life safety risk and all of those things. So, but certainly, making pedestrian access a priority is something that we've looked at across wards. Over in the east, there are still streets that have not had a walkable footpath for since the earthquakes, and so there's a lot of work to be done, but certainly very keen to make sure that Port Hills don't miss out in that regard either. So, Paul.
Yeah, look, there's quite a considerable amount of money going into the opening of the Littleton Sumner corridor.
Yeah.
And it just seems to make a lot of sense. We have money on budget for some of the cycleways. There is money on budget for Coastal Pathway, and linking those projects into the reinstatement of some of these pathways would be a really good idea.
Yeah. I
think the cost efficiencies in doing that could save us potentially millions of dollars.
Yeah. So, Dave, would you like to update?
And particularly around Moa Point, we're certainly doing that. We're looking at the alternatives. My understanding is we've put a temporary footpath on the outside of it. The work that we're going to be doing in the remediation of the mass movement is totally different to the work that we're doing around the roading, but we are looking at linking the funding that we've got available to bring back a footpath, the funding that's available for the Coastal Pathway and the cycleway, all into one sort of project. However, we are at that prelim design stage at this, because till we work out exactly the mass movement, we've bought the houses, all the rest of it, how that bund's going to go, that design still needs to be finished. So we're looking at integrating it, and I am trying to accelerate, because I believe that the temporary footpath that we've put in is sort of falling into the sea a bit, and so we are looking at whether we can accelerate some of that work to make at least a reasonable footpath. However, we don't want to duplicate funding or expense basically and do one, so we're looking at how we could accelerate maybe a final solution.
I wonder if it would be good to do a presentation to the community board, or even a presentation out in the community, with and some of the...
Certainly we've been flicking, having a number of community meetings and a number of newsletters that are going out reasonably. I suppose at this point I don't have the details, so it's a bit early to come and talk detail, but certainly staff are working in that space. So as soon as that's available, I think there's been quite a good flow of information backwards and forwards, I think, at this stage, and we'll certainly continue that.
I think, that they would like to be involved in the sort of the earlier part of it. So, because, after you design something and then go out and talk to people, then sometimes,
fait accompli, we so appreciate that.
You get my drift.
Yeah.
Good. Yanni.
Yeah, can I just clarify, because I think that really goes to the heart of the problem, which is that the local community board and the council doesn't have decision making over the design of this corridor. That's being done through the HIG, which prevents any opportunity for alternative design betterment. So can you just clarify the decision making process around these projects? Because we have had meetings and we have been told what's happening, but that is quite different to us actually being the decision maker, where we can weigh up the different things people say.
I imagine the final solution, particularly around the Mile Point peacock we're talking about at the moment, is really sits probably along the lines of the coastal pathway, because I don't think we would actually build a footpath and then the coastal pathway next door. It'd be an integrated decision-making process that would involve the community. And it's a little bit like where we've done the breakwater further round in Redcliffs. We have then taken that piece of work and incorporated in some of the work that Skirt's doing, so in actual fact it makes they actually occupy that whole site. And so we will then look, once we've done those separate bits of work, bundling it to see whether we can get a better cost of delivery.
I think that the decision making will on the footpaths, it looks like will lie with the council, because the actual corridor project itself, while it is taking away a 2.5 metre footpath to do the rockfall safety, the actual transport project itself doesn't include any funding to replace that footpath somewhere safely.
Can you
And
comment
it's going
on
to come
that?
out of BAU funding.
Because the skirt optimisation.
Basically, the work that we're doing around the rockfall and remediation, the last movement has got a very tight corridor, and it doesn't incorporate reinstatement of that, so it's actually coming back into the normal program, but there is money in the budget of that normal BAU program to do that. And certainly, look, footpaths are a priority, so that will be incorporated when we redesign. My understanding is the levels of that road aren't going to change that much, nor is the alignment of that road. However, obviously there will be curbs and channels, and there will be footpaths and things like that.
But we've heard here today that there is money in the BAU council budget for this part of the project. And I think people forget that footpaths aren't included in the NZTA budget. So that's why it's not on the skirt program. So, yeah. But anyway, it's... that was a very reassuring comment, and I'm glad I asked you to make it.
Yes. The other thing is that in that area, behind those large shipping containers at the moment are 3 historic cairns.
Yeah.
And the community are very concerned to make sure that they are removed safely and reinstated in an appropriate place. And so that's a key concern, because there's actually no funding for that in the project as well. My understanding is that they're going to be removed as safely as possible and stored by council.
To the ready again.
We've got advice from the heritage people about preserving it, so they are being preserved so they can be lifted, and they are going to lift them and take them to one of our sites, because we don't want them knocked over as we do earthworks or bunds or rock falls or whatever we're going to be doing behind those containers. And then we'll come back to the community. I'm not sure, because of resource consenting planning, whether they can go back into the place where they were. So we will need to maybe talk to the community about where they go in the long term. But they are we're getting advice, I don't know exactly what they've been done, but they've been dismantled in such a way that we can rebuild them as they looked, but they may not be able to go back in the same, and we'll talk to the community about that. And that could be a feature along the coastal walkway.
One very final last one on this before we keep moving.
You're doing well.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember that when the council resolved the mass movement areas, they ran a series of quite highly technical public meetings in areas around the Port Hills, and the information was very technical. A lot of people didn't understand it fully, but seeing the experts go through the process that they came to decide on these mass movement areas, and was really reassuring for the public, and it took a lot of the heat out of the situation. And it would be really good to have even while we don't have all of the solutions, to explain the technical information in a really full and proper way to that community, those communities along there, is really, really important, and will help them understand why, for example, Moabone Point won't have a footpath in front of it, even though it was a key walking route. And so I think a public meeting would be really, really useful in this case.
Yeah, no, I'm all in favour of those, because I think the more information we can provide, the less stress there is in the community around, what's unknown. I remember we organised a GNS scientist to come down after the Valentine's Day earthquake.
That's right.
And there was one thing he said that I just cannot, I cannot believe I didn't hear it at any time after the earthquakes, which is, earthquakes do not relieve stress, they redistribute stress. And I just thought it's just such a clear reason why you get aftershocks that I can't believe that I never heard anyone say it. And I always remember that sometimes, you know, you've got to keep saying something over and over again because somebody will be hearing it for the first time, even though you've said it for the 100th time, you know. But anyway, that's the thing. So, Paul, you'd like to move that?
I'd like to move it. I'd just like to make one other comment, just that these corridors are actually not just actually local corridors. It is a route for, you know, for everybody in Christchurch to go to our coastal areas. The same with New Brighton. We've got areas that people go to, but they've been frightened. The community's been frightened, and it'd be good around these public conversations around the risks and so forth and how they're being mitigated for the rest of Christchurch to find out about them as well.
Yep, Yanni.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the resolution. Just say, I think getting that synergy between the cycleway program, the skirt program, I mean, they're only doing ram repairs here anyway, so they're only patching the road. They're not doing a full reconstruction, which is part of the problem. And getting the alignment to the land mass movement and the risk, the rockfall, cliff collapse issues, I think is really, really critical. It's much better for us to just do it once and do it properly. Otherwise, the disruption that gets caused, I mean, you know, even the local repairs have shut traffic for hours going on that really busy corridor. So I think it's good to have the public meetings, but it's actually just as important to actually tie in all the different work streams of things that we want to do as a council, and have a really clear decision-making process around it. Because at the moment, there's 3 different types of decisions being made: cycleways, skirt, HIG through the road corridor safety aspects, and then possibly the community board around a sort of temporary / permanent coastal pathway thing. So I think the more alignment we can get with decision making and synergy, so we're making one decision and people can see clearly what the designs are, the better. And if we learn anything from the Beachville example, was it's better to go out and consult at the start and get everyone on board rather than have something delayed, which in turn costs us huge amounts of money, hundreds of thousands in that case.
Yep, no, it's a good point.
Can I just make a point about these public conversations, including the funding arrangements too, putting faith in our community to handle that. I mean, the fact that Skirt doesn't do betterment, and the point Sarah made over the footpaths as well. So, you know, moving into that BAU arrangement with council, that's their best chance.
Yeah, I have read the odd comment in the various places where it suggested that because Skirt aren't doing it, it's not getting done for 30 years. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. So I think just clarifying that would be good.
Yes. Anyway, that we have to live with that. So I will put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. That's carried. And